Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Sunday, the 1st of September 2019, and we're spending today looking at the issue of China. Why it poses such a threat to the United States, and some would argue the world. We ask the question, is it everyone's friend because of its production of low-cost goods, or is it a secret enemy, winning its way into the hearts of consumers until it is time to announce its dominance over the world? Let's take a look, shall we? China's history is rich with art, politics, science, and philosophy. It is home to the oldest of the major world civilizations and was ruled by various dynasties for much of its history. The first dynasty is believed to be the Xi dynasty, which formed around 2250 BC. The Shang or Yin dynasty gained power around the 14th century BC. The Han dynasty, which lasted over 400 years, from 206 BC to 220 AD, was one of the most influential in China's history. Much of the culture today was created during the Han dynasty. Later famous dynasties like the Song and the Tang continued to refine the culture and bring new innovations to the world, including printed money, a permanent navy, and a complex government that ruled over 100 million people. The last of the great dynasties, the Qing dynasty, Q-U-I-N-G if we pronounce it incorrectly, began in 1644. The Ming dynasty was in power, but was overthrown by the Manchus, who put the Qing dynasty into power. During this dynasty, Western influences, European trade, and a number of wars all served to weaken China. Great Britain gained control of Hong Kong after the Opium Wars, for example. Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China on October 1st, 1949. 70 years ago, a month from today. This new government was strongly allied with the Soviet Union and modelled its government after Soviet communism. In 1958, Mao Zedong embarked on a new plan called the Great Leap Forward. Unfortunately, this plan backfired, and China experienced a terrible famine, including much starvation and death. Over the next several decades, China would struggle with political reforms and economic policy, slowly recovering and becoming a major world power again. Today, China is a major world power and the second largest economy in the world. In 1972, the People's Republic of China was admitted to the United Nations in place of the Republic of China, with permanent membership of the Security Council. A power struggle followed Mao's death in 1976. The Gang of Four were arrested and blamed for the excesses of the Cultural Revolution, marking the end of a turbulent political era in China. Deng Xiaoping outmaneuvered Mao's anointed successor, Chairman Hua Guofeng, and gradually emerged as the de facto leader over the next few years. Deng Xiaoping was the paramount leader of China from 1978 to 1992, although he never became the head of the party or state, and his influence within the party led the country to significant economic reforms. The Communist Party subsequently loosened governmental control over citizens' personal lives, and the communes were disbanded, with many peasants receiving multiple land leases, which greatly increased incentives and agricultural production. In addition, there were many free market areas open. The most successful free market area was Shenzhen. It is located in Guangdong, and the property tax-free area still exists today. This turn of events marked China's transition from a planned economy to a mixed economy, with an increasingly open market environment, a system termed by some as market socialism, and officially by the Communist Party of China as socialism with Chinese characteristics. The PRC, or People's Republic of China, adopted its current constitution on the 4th of December 1982. The country then formally joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. Now, coming up to date, China's current leader is Xi Jinping, born 15th of June 1953, and he serves as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, President of the People's Republic of China, Chairman of the Central Military Commission. He's often described as China's paramount leader since 2012, and he officially received the title of Core Leader from the CPC in 2016. And as General Secretary, Xi holds an ex officio seat on the Politburo Standing Committee of the Communist Party of China, China's top decision-making body. Now, since assuming power, Xi has introduced far-ranging measures to enforce party discipline and to ensure internal unity. His signature anti-corruption campaign has led to the downfall of prominent incumbent and retired Communist Party officials, including members of the Politburo's Standing Committee. He is described as a Chinese nationalist, and this is important for us to note, and we shall come back to this later in the video. He has tightened restrictions over civil society and ideological discourse, advocating internet censorship in China as the concept of internet sovereignty. He has also championed a more assertive foreign policy, particularly with regards to China-Japan relations, China's claims in the South China Sea, and its role as a leading advocate of free trade and globalization. Xi has sought to expand China's African and Eurasian influence through the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, Xi has significantly, and we cannot underemphasize this, significantly centralized institutional power by taking on this wide range of leadership positions, which also includes chairing the newly formed National Security Commission, as well as new steering committees on economic and social reforms, military restructuring and modernization, and the internet. In 2018, a law was passed removing term limits for the presidency, thereby making President Xi president for life, and in view of his other posts, probably the most powerful Chinese leader in its history, certainly when estimating the resources he has at his disposal. By way of interest, in 2017, The Economist magazine named him the most powerful person in the world, and in 2018, Forbes ranked him as the most powerful and influential person in the world. So what does this mean for China today? Well, firstly, we have to recognize that the Mandarin meaning of the word China is center of the universe. And historically, it has been believed by Chinese leaders that they are the sun and every other country are transitory planets circling around it. The past 100 years, though, has essentially been the American century, and China has broadly regarded it as the century of humiliation, something which President Xi, with his nationalistic beliefs and focus, intends to correct. Graham Allison, professor of government at Harvard Business School, and regarded as a notable expert on China, published a book last year entitled Destined for War: Can America and China Escape Thucydides' trap? We've placed a link in the description box below. Now, without going into any depth, this book highlights the rise of China. America is facing its first serious economic competitor since it overtook Britain in the 19th century. The US has also been the dominant power in Asia since 1945. When President Xi became China's leader in 2012, he announced that his aim was to make China great again. Where have you heard that phrase since? This has meant a more assertive China, which now regards the South China Sea as its backyard and has started to flex its muscles. Xi talks of Asia for the Asians and wants the United States to withdraw its military from the region. An interesting part of the book, and so relevant to those of us interested in precious metals and money, is that Allison states that Xi not only intends to make China great again, but for it to be repositioned to its natural place, at the top of the world order. In fact, he has even given a slight timetable for that resurrection. By 2025, to dominate domestic markets in 10 major technologies, including driverless cars, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. By 2035, to be the dominant force in technology and innovation throughout the world. And by 2049, just 30 years away, and the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, to establish itself as the #1 economic and military superpower throughout the globe. With a growth rate currently of 6% plus per annum, compared with the US growth of around 2.5%, and expected to fall, and a population 4 times the size of the United States. According to Bloomberg, using IMF projections, China's share of global GDP growth is expected to represent 28% of the total of the world, followed by India and the United States. The latter forecast is 10.5%, and this is for next year. So this powerhouse is posing a serious and significant threat to US global dominance, and one can, to some extent, understand President Trump and his administration's anxiety, frustration, and determination to do something about it. Where Trump is correct in blaming previous administrations for allowing this growth to occur, and US hegemony to reduce under Obama, Bush, and Clinton, is that those administrations believed China to be its friend, and that by allowing its meteoric growth, their own industries would benefit, now many have, global growth would be sustained. In fact, China has been the largest single contributor to world growth since the global financial crisis of 2008, and China allowing more Western businesses and money into its economy would move from an authoritarian state to a more liberal-type democracy, which, in reality, it hasn't, and most certainly has not under President Xi. Though its markets are more open than ever, but are still restrictive, and the theft of inward investing companies' intellectual property rights are stolen wholesale. So, with new US trade tariffs taking effect today, and China's promise to introduce more tariffs on the US, where does all of this leave us? We've stated on many occasions, unlike President Xi and China's history of decades of hardship, the US is unlikely to allow plummeting economic growth and a potential rise in unemployment and a falling stock market to go unpunished. And that punishment is likely to be the election of a new president in 2020. This is Trump's dilemma over the coming weeks. Does he put his presidency in jeopardy, play serious hardball with the Chinese, who could easily walk away and wait 15 months? Or does he, next month, come to some moderate agreement, paint it as a victory, and hopefully save his presidential ambitions at the risk of allowing China's advancement to continue? We can all guess at the answer and state which seems logical, but none of us can accurately predict which step will be taken with any degree of absolute certainty. That said, China has an Achilles heel, and that is Hong Kong, from where the majority of China's capital's inflows and outflows are channeled. Hong Kong has had its fastest rate of growth between 2008 and 2018 in its entire history, and will unlikely see that level of expansion again. Hong Kong's banking system is almost 9 times its GDP. It has moved from being a net goods exporter to a net goods importer, and 80% of its economy relies on China via its export of services, especially financial services. Approximately 30% of its assets are loaned to Chinese property developers in China. The remainder goes to domestic SMEs and mortgages. Now, it's the mortgages which raise a threat. Let's explain. The average loan-to-value mortgage in Hong Kong is 50%. But behind this is a hidden factor. Generally, when people acquire a property, they take out a 50% bank loan. They receive a 35% deposit from the property developer they're purchasing from, which is repayable, and they borrow 15% from family and friends. With property prices rising over the past 10 years by an average of 240%, it has been possible to repay the developers and the family back within 4 to 5 years. The issue is, however, what happens when the property prices stop rising, as they did in the 2008 crash, and worse, start to decline. With the average Hong Kong property valued at $1.2 million, one can easily see a major problem arising. And with student unrest in Hong Kong and businesses being threatened, this important Chinese hub could literally collapse or require significant Chinese reinvestment, which is why the authorities are building, for example, an $80 billion artificial island to help fix the crisis of house affordability. A second concern for China is, of course, that despite its rapid growth, its debts have grown twice as fast. Now, to some extent, it can manage this, as many of those debts are internal, and in a control and command economy, it can dictate what happens to them. However, although approximately 15% of global GDP is created by China, only 1% is settled in its currency, the renminbi. The balance is essentially settled in dollars, euros, and the yen. Now, without going through the mechanics of international trade and how it is financed, the net result is that, ironically, in order to continue its external trading, China needs more dollars, as its own currency is not readily acceptable in settlement. Not surprising when one considers how frequently it has been devalued, especially lately. This, to some degree, holds China hostage to the United States, at least for now, and also explains to some extent the underpinning of the US dollar. Would it like to move away from this reliance? Of course it would, and it will eventually. But while the rest of the world settles in US dollars, it has little choice. With the Eurozone potentially entering into a recession, well before the US does for sure, one can also see capital flows into the US dollar and out of the euro. And if this transpires, we shall see an even increasing dollar, which will embolden President Trump to exert even more pressure on the Fed to reduce rates. An interesting circle of events. So with all of this in mind, China has been the United States' friend, with one day having the intention of being its enemy. And since Trump has come to power, the mask has slipped somewhat. So when Trump asks who is the greatest enemy to the United States, President Xi or Fed Chair Jerome Powell, we suspect the answer is obvious. What about you? Do share your thoughts. We hope you have found this video interesting and informative, and if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.